the senses of the person, and even more yet than the emotions of the person. And pleasure also has an impact on the body of the person, on the physical body of the person. And then eventually we're going to get to how a person relates to another person, what potential pleasure has in relating to another person. Pleasure is considered the deepest kayach in the nefesh. One of the deepest potential character trait in the person. It is separated from the other character traits, and it can turn over the other character traits from one extreme to another. An interesting example for that is halacha. There is halacha we cannot fast on Shabbos. What happens if a person has a bad dream, and the dream happened 3 times? So if the person feels so uncomfortable that about the dream, and the 3rd time it happened was Friday night, he can fast on Shabbos if he wishes so. Why? Because his fasting is considered his pleasure. What do we see from this? The potential of what pleasure can accomplish in a person. That pleasure could turn over the body of the person and say, fasting is considered pleasure. And therefore he can fast on Shabbos because he is troubled by the dream that he had 3 times. There are certain dreams, we're going to be ready to start dreaming tonight. There are certain dreams that Shulchan Aruch says a person should, if a person takes aware, is aware of it and is actually sensitive to it. On the other hand, our sages tell us also that whatever a person thinks in the daytime comes at night. So it's not really, the question is, in the Talmud, it's discussed in a lengthy form. The Tractate of Brochus, what is the significance of dreams?
We have Birkat Kohanim to...
Birkat Kohanim is right, where it's something that actually changes it to the good. When the Kohanim give their blessing during the time of the holidays, Yom Tevin, that is when a person says a special prayer that all the dreams should be converted to good. And this is actually in that same chapter in the Talmud. So Hasidus explains that the remes for that is aldera, the same thing like honey. Honey comes from bee. A bee is a non-kosher creature. But there's a certain process that changes it over that it becomes kosher. Certain process and how it's processed over. The same thing is also in regards to this fast. When a person fasts Shabbos, for this person it's considered Tainuk Shabbos. He is fasting because he has a Tainuk. We're going to get to it further to see what is stronger, will or pleasure. That's a separate thing. And actually this will also come up again, because on one hand we would figure that will is stronger. Because why is it that he's fasting? Because he wants to fast. So the fast becomes a pleasure. So it's will over pleasure. On the other hand, the explanation for that is that although pleasure has been brought down by will, because will is over pleasure in this case, but still the person, this pleasure still steps up, and this person's oinek Shabbos, pleasure of Shabbos, is by fasting. So although it was defeated, pleasure was defeated by the order of the will to fast, but still it's something that changes over the body, that the person feels a pleasure by fasting. So pleasure is still survives, and not only survives, but actually rules, that this is the Tainuk Shabbos. Pleasure is something that consists of all the different character traits that follow. Pleasure is something that relates to all the different, to the intellectual capabilities, to the emotional capabilities. Pleasure is also something that relates, as mentioned earlier, hobbies, different hobbies, if it's art, if it's music, if it's other things. Everything the pleasure is the background behind it. And it is something that drives the person, forces the person, is the force that the person should go ahead with it and interest himself in that. So there's an interesting talk that was given by the Rebbe, that the Rebbe mentions that Tainuk when we say tainug is something, pleasure is something that contains everything, so a person could sometimes be satisfied pleasure of food or pleasure of something more advanced. The teaching of pleasure is that there's pleasure on all levels, and a person should never be satisfied with the minimum but aim for the maximum. An expression. A person should not be satisfied with pearls in the soup but pearls on a necklace. Pearls in the soup means mushroom barley, other things also considered pearls. They sell them for very cheap in the groceries, but that doesn't count the pearls on the necklace. The same thing is also in regards to a person's accomplishments. A person has an accomplishment. He can be satisfied with minimum, but he should feel that he can actually excel to higher, and he has the potential. Just has to allow himself to stretch, and then he can extend to the highest level of pleasure, which is pleasure of seichel, thinking, understanding. This is the pleasure of the neshamas. The souls in Gan Eden, their pleasure is understanding godliness. This is their reward for learning, studying Torah in this physical world. So pleasure actually has, everything begins with pleasure, but it has an influence on all the different character traits. And it has also on the physical aspects of even the keach hasiyah, the potential of doing, which is already the characteristic, which is already relating to the outside world. It is all influenced by pleasure. And therefore, because since we said that pleasure is something that's in everything, so we must say that pleasure consists of everything. Because in order that pleasure should be in everything, it originated in pleasure. And from pleasure, it is later comes down in different levels. It's pleasure of eating, it's pleasure in hobbies. So all these things were already included in pleasure, because otherwise they wouldn't have any connection, relate at all to pleasure. Now comes a new dimension. Pleasure reaches out and can affect the person's body. And that is mentioned in the Talmud, in the tractate of Gittin, discussing the destruction of the temple, the Beis HaMikdash. There was a Roman general that came there, and he was one of the people that came to destroy the temple. And suddenly he got news from Rome that the emperor in Rome died. He knew that he was next in command. He felt such a pleasure that he felt so uplifted that when he tried to put his foot into his shoe, it did not fit in. What does this show? This shows, and the Rebbe brings it out. It's the hat also, but the Gemara says even the shoe, the ankle of the foot. This ankle of the foot is the lowest part in the person's body. It is considered in the Talmud the devil in the person, because this is the least energy obvious in the ankle of the person, the least sensitivity. A person is walking on his feet, the least sensitivity there could be. There is life there, but it's a lot less and not so delicate as the other parts of the body. What happened over here was, it was someone, not necessarily a refined person, as we see here that he came to destroy the temple. And it was after his 20 years or whatever it is till the body grows and stops growing. So he was past those years. And it's the lowest part of his body. And as soon as he heard some good news, it touched the fat of the bone of that body. And actually, Shlomo Melech, King Solomon says it also. Shmua teva tedashin otzim. Good news makes the bone fat. It broadens the body. It broadens the bones. The bones is in the body itself. It's not the blood, it's not the muscles, it's not the arteries, it's the bones, which are the most removed from the other parts, sensitive parts of the body. It is also quoted, this is 1967, the talk that Rebbe gave, that doctors said that from pleasure a person can also get